Let's speak to a person who's been doing his own investigation. Got a very sharp needle. He's been going through the haystack of the National Lotteries Commission corruption. Raymond Joseph is his name. He's been publishing report after report for Ground Up. Raymond, good afternoon to you. How big could the corruption at the procurement side of the National Lotteries Commission actually be?
So, from what I have seen personally, it's huge, and I haven't really pursued that, because I don't have access to the bank accounts. But talking to the people who are doing the investigations, the SIU, I know for a fact, keeps bumping into this kind of stuff, where procurement plays a big role. So what I'm seeing, Stephen, is huge payments to service providers, which are then being paid on to others. And the National Lotteries Commission, in many cases, was using that to keep the names of service providers off their books. It's so lawyers, one of the first things they would investigate would be lawyers. The entire NLC panel of lawyers has been suspended because of problems there. And huge amounts of money were paid to different law firms. Payments to media were huge, running into tens of millions of rands. In fact, they admit in two previous annual reports that a lot of this money they were spending to counter Ground Up's reporting on the corruption. They don't particularly say it's Ground Up. What they do say is one journalist from one media agency. If you've been following the story, it's not hard to work out who they're talking about. It's literally tens of millions of rands. Ethics training. It just goes on and on and on.
The National Lotteries Commission may be guilty of procurement fraud for ethics training. Wow. Okay. So Raymond,
well, they spend millions on ethics training at a time when the place was consumed by an ethical breakdown. Yes.
Sure. So were they then paying journalists to write stories, media houses to publish stories? Is that the suggestion, or are you talking about paid-for advertising?
So Stephen, what a lot of advertorial, but I have certainly, and I'm publishing a story pretty soon, where a particular media house, for example, was earning almost R1 million a month for advertorials. They were then attacking myself, Ground Up, and anyone perceived as an enemy, so to speak, of the NLC. It happened in the paper, it stopped in the paper, but certainly online. If the NLC opened up an envelope, they would run the press release, and it's quite funny. I found press releases dressed up in stories, and the stories end with for immediate release. They were buying airtime on television. They were buying airtime on radio. So, look, in many cases, the media houses who were selling this, you can't really blame them, Stephen. A lot of this expenditure has been declared unauthorized expenditure by the AG. But, the media houses who ran it, you can't really blame them. There are examples. There are examples where I have serious doubts about what was going on. But in many cases, that's what was happening. They were buying good news. They were buying themselves onto radio shows, soft soap interviews, no mention of corruption. And there was a lot of that, Stephen. We're talking tens of millions of rands, if not more.
Sure.
I know of.
The SIU's been doing various reports. They've, I think, 3 phases of their investigation now. I realize and I understand, and I make no sort of judgment on this. It's often easier for a journalist to publish information than it is for an agency like the SIU to get that information in a form in which it can be used legally. There are different things here. Everyone has their own role to play. That said, is the SIU moving quickly enough for you?
No, I think the SIU is. I think the real focus should be on the Hawks and the National Prosecuting Authority. So we keep hearing about the Hawks investigating. The NLC has handed over matters to both the Hawks and to the SIU. The SIU So bear in mind that the SIU does not have prosecutorial powers. Or its mandate is to recover money lost through state money lost through corruption. But what they do, the investigations on a prosecutorial level. So there's a chain of evidence. There are properly taken statements. There are bank statements. There's all that kind of stuff, which are then handed over to the hawks. You know, the hawks are getting probably 95% of the investigation done, frankly. And that is where the logjam is, Stephen. I'm very glad to hear that the SIU has finally come into the 21st century and are using data analysts, because really that stuff is very, very complex. You know, my head spins. I've got to turn to auditors and accountants to help me interpret it. You know, and doing those deep dives and following the money, because what was happening is money was washing through accounts. So the example I gave you with procurement, where money would be paid millions would be paid to an organization, which in turn paid on to another organization, A, keeping it off the books, and B, muddying the trail. You know, and following the money through that stuff. Unfortunately, as investigative journalists, I wish I could walk into a bank and demand bank statements. I really wish I did. I can't. You know, I can only depend on what's leaked to me. But certainly the SIU has acquired all these bank statements, and they do have some pretty clever guys there who have followed the money. You've only got to have a look at the reporting that the SIU has done to Parliament already, where they redacted names, but it was quite clear how they followed the money. Terry Petto is a prime example. The actress Terry Petto is how they followed the payment to a non-profit, to Terry Petto, to a builder. It passed through 3 or 4 different bank accounts, you know, and you've got to be sharp to follow that money. You really do.
Raymond Joseph.
And in other cases, there are actually companies that have been identified as laundromats. Quite literally. Money is paid through them, they disburse it, and each time the money is paid over, someone takes their cut and pays it on to the next person. And it's very difficult to follow that if, A, you need access. More importantly, you need someone with the data skills and the financial understanding to interpret what's going on.
Raymond Joseph, really appreciate the time. Journalist at Ground Up, thank you very much indeed. Maybe you should be seconded to the Special Investigating Unit.